you all for being here today. This is our session on the 5 attributes of high performance teams. And I'm very pleased to be joined with John Mannion, a lifelong friend and highly decorated football coach and coach of many sports. So we'll jump right into it, but thank you for attending today. Today will be about 30 minutes is what we're shooting for, more or less, to just to give you an idea of our timing for today. And we'll be happy to take questions, but I think maybe we could take them, if you can hold them maybe to the end. We'll leave a little bit of time at the end for that, okay? So myself, I'm Ralph, and I've been in fitness and management for 35 plus years. Various positions as a senior vice president with a large company. I've been COO of a couple startups. Currently, right now, I am a partner consultant with the Table Group, which is Pat Lincioni's consulting arm. And I'm doing sessions around the 5 dysfunctions and the 6 types of working genius. And I'm very pleased to be partnered up with John on this. We've got one more person coming in. I'm going to go ahead and admit her. So John, you want to go ahead and
sure. Well, thank you, Ralph, for the introduction there. My name is John Mannion. I am. This is my 33rd year as a high school teacher. I split time between California and Oregon. In addition to that, I coached high school football for 35 years, as well as a variety of other sports, from basketball, baseball, track and field, and I was athletic director for a time. So my background really is in education and in high school athletics. This past January, I guess about a little over a year ago now, I stepped down as a football coach. So it was the first fall without football in many, many years. But I've since kind of gotten into a little bit of writing. I write a monthly newsletter targeting high school coaches and just really about group dynamics. And I've also been able to do some mentoring along the way with younger coaches. So I still have an involvement with sports. And really, Ralph and I became friends in 1994 when we moved onto the same court way back when. Our 2 children, his son and my son and daughters, were the same age and really grew up together and still remain good friends. Ralph and his wife Elizabeth were, really lifelong friends, both through neighbors, sports, our church involvement. So we have a really good relationship, and I know Ralph sort of reached out to me a little bit, about maybe kind of combining some of his knowledge and experience in sort of the more corporate world with some of the things that I've seen applied into the athletic world. And no, I'm really excited to be part of this. So it's been a great idea and a great thing, kind of getting to know he and his family over the years.
Yeah. So John, one thing John won't tell you about himself is that he was a finalist in the National High School Football Coach of the Year. He was one of 5 finalists in a national competition. So a huge honor that John wouldn't tell you about that himself. So that's congratulations. And that was just last year, John's last year. So and I've had the opportunity to coach a flag football team with John and be able to see him in action and just how great he is with the kids. So how we came up with this idea is that John's working on his newsletter and he's working on helping coaches get better. And I'm working on organizational health and helping managers get better. And I'm writing an article about accountability. And I'm coming up with ideas on examples, and all the sports ideas keep coming to me. And I'm thinking, man, John Mannion has probably 25 way better examples than I can ever come up with for this topic. So I reached out to John and we said, you know what, I think we've got something where we can combine the athletic and coaching side with the managerial workplace side and combine the 2 things around the 5 dysfunctions of a team and see if we could help people understand these concepts a little bit and give them some tools in the workplace and in the coaching world that could potentially help them and cross over both ways. So that's why we're doing it, and that's why we put this program together. And we're excited to help people regardless. And I think that because of our experience and how much we've done and how well we know each other and our histories, that we feel like we're in a good position to be able to share what we've learned with others and hopefully help them. Yeah, John, anything you want to add to
Yeah,
that?
I would add to that as well. One of the things that I benefited tremendously throughout my 35 years is getting great mentoring from other people. And I think that, as a coach and as a teacher, so many people were so willing to sort of share their expertise at various stops along the way. And even little tidbits of things really resonated with me over that amount of time. And so as I've kind of stepped back from the full-time coaching position, I really would love to find ways to do that for others as well. And I think the mentorship that I'm involved with in the coaching in Oregon, as well as the writing and hopefully this can just provide, ways and things for people to think about and consider that can hopefully help their team / organization, / managerial group, hopefully be more successful.
Awesome. All right. So we're going to talk today about the building a cohesive leadership team. And building a cohesive leadership team is probably the biggest competitive advantage you could have, whether it's a coaching staff or managerial team. If your team is completely pulled together and unified and is working in one direction, to use a cliche, you're all pulling on the rope together, then it's a huge advantage. And there's so many organizations where that's not the case, where you see a lot of siloed working. You see departments that are just focused on their department and their people and their budget, irregardless of the rest of the organization and the organizational goals. So we do feel like that building a cohesive leadership team is really where it starts. And that's where we wanted to start with all of you. So we're going to talk about why some teams that have top talent struggle to do well, struggle to win. And there's a bunch of these. And then there's other teams that have lesser talent, but are able to pull it together and win. So I'd love to, John, for you to expand on that.
Yeah, no, well, thank you. And I think going back to the first point there, really building a cohesive leadership team, I think with any team or organization, I've always said we really want to strive to be great at the things that we can control. Because in any sort of environment, there's certain things that are a bit outside of your control, but really being purposeful about cohesion and working together and fostering that is something that, while everyone's a little bit different and there's different personalities, a cohesive group can be a formidable thing. And so I think looking at this as an opportunity to be great at something that you actually control, I think is one way to consider it. As far as like teams with top talent, I think, I think that really the message that, I like to give with my teams is like, I never talk about we're going to score the most touchdowns. I never talk about we're going to, have the most, interceptions or sacks. I always try to frame everything in terms of effort, because I think that, effort and outworking your opponent will overcome talent. Okay. Not every single time, but much of the time. And I think that sometimes teams that are ultra talented and can be a real gulf between the real talented players and everybody else. There can be all kinds of dynamics that are created that while, you want to have talent, but I think having that sort of togetherness and work ethic and kind of motto of we're going to outwork our opponent, I think can really help overcome, certain talent gaps, if you want to call it that, or even, certain disadvantages. And I think that's proven true in team sports, time and time again.
Yeah. And I think, in the workplace, I think we see that a lot where you've got managers that are able to potentially sacrifice their own resources, whether it's budget or personnel or that, for the greater organization, and not be working just in their space, right? And I think maybe that's a little bit of what we see in sports as well, right? When players are willing to sacrifice for the greater good, or managers can sacrifice for the greater good, then you start to get to where you're seeing something kind of special.
And I think that for sure that's the case. And I think that's where I think this comes in, is that people aren't just going to show up inherently wanting to be unselfish and sacrifice for someone else. But if you message it, and if you are clear about why that's important, or, if you value everyone in the building, if you value everyone on your team and they feel empowered and valuable to the group, there's a lot of things that can happen that can then make them willing to do that. And I think really, like unselfishness and make it more about the group than about the individual. Someone's going to score the touchdown, right, on a Friday night, but we're not celebrating just that person. We're celebrating all the guys on the team that were part of that success. And I think being intentional about that, and that's not to say that individual achievement's not important, because it is. But I think I try to look at it as a byproduct of the totality of the group. And that's something that the teams I've coached, I've placed a lot of value on, is that, if someone else scores a touchdown, we're happy for them. It's because we all did it. It's not because that person's not just that good. But again, it's a little bit of a hard needle to thread, but I think it's doable. And I think, again, when Ralph, kind of shared with me some of these strategies that we'll mention a little bit further along here, a lot of it, really, really, I've seen evident for years on that in the athletic environment.
Yeah. Yeah. So John, you've seen a lot of great teams you've been a part of a lot of great teams. We have the audience. We've been part of really great teams, whether it was back when we were in school or maybe a work team in the past. So one of the exercises we do when we work with groups is we do this best team exercise. And what we do, we go around the room and we ask everybody to talk about what are the attributes of the best team that you've ever been on. So since we're doing it in this format, John and I will go ahead and talk about that. But John, please, what are some of the attributes that you have seen in the most successful teams that you've coached?
Well, I certainly think unselfishness is at the top of the list for me, that guys are unselfish. I think also, kind of work ethic, and a phrase that we often use is, don't be too cool to hustle. Like, be willing to hustle, be willing to understand that the little things are important. But I also think that everyone feeling valued is so critical. And I think as a leader, we have to make people feel valued. And I know that, we were chatting about this, one situation popped into my head. It was in 2012. I was in Silverton, Oregon. I'd moved there in 2010, and our team had not been very good. And then by the third year, we were actually pretty good. And we were playing a team that had not lost a league game in like 5 years, and our school had never beaten them. And so we're actually beating them, and it's getting toward the end of the game in the fourth quarter, and we had to get a couple first downs to win the game. And one of our best offensive linemen hurt his ankle. He's on the field. He's going to have to come out of the game. It's kind of a critical moment. And so I go out to tend to him. I come back, and I call over a sophomore who's going to have to take his place, who hadn't really played much varsity football. And I was going to, get him out there, and he's going to have to do it now. And as he's jogging over, I call his name. He's jogging over to me. Before he can get to me, a senior on our team, Carlos Rodriguez, who never played, he was a great kid, just, great teammate. He steps forward, grabs this kid, tells him, "Come on, man, you're ready for this. You practice all week. Go," and so I hear that, and what can I say? I'm like, he said it all. And so I think the point is that team was an excellent team on the field, and we won. We won in the game and had a lot of wins. But to me, that little moment will always be with me, that here's a guy that was so invested. He was so in the moment that he knew what was happening, took charge of the situation, where then again, yet he was someone who got little if no glory at all, but in a lot of ways was important as anybody else. So I think that kind of culture really, it can take you so far.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome story. And I think of the work teams that I've been on, where it's been kind of a special environment, and there's always been an element of fun, right? Where we are having a good time working hard, right? And there's a lot of laughing. There's a lot of joking, because there's this great camaraderie. But it's like, that's when you know that you're kind of in it together, when everyone's laughing and joking. And that's one of the things, right, that I know have been like one of the special things with teams I've been on. I mean, as far as like things like sort of accountability, John, I mean, you see like a high degree of accountability with teams, the great teams you've been working with.
Yeah, and I think one of the things with accountability, it kind of starts with like they have to know the mission, sort of. They have to know, here's, we need you to be on time. We need you to come to the summer workouts every morning. It's not easy. I often will say, if it was easy, if it was easy to have a good team, then everybody have a good team. But it's not. It's hard. And so here's why we're doing it. And then it becomes a consistency thing. It becomes like, you have to model it as a coach, but also the players have to know that, hey, it's every guy from number 1 down to number 50 on our varsity team. We're all looking for everybody else to be there. There's not, like, again, a tiered system where the best player can kind of come in late. It's kind of fostering this thing of, group accountability, because, and I've told players, like, hey, forget about what I think. What do you think all these other guys think if you don't show up? And I think by building a positive, in the other part is a positive environment built on respect.
Yeah.
Because we're all doing the same thing. That it kind of really feeds into this idea that, hey, I got to pull my weight because I know the guy next to me is pulling his weight.
Yeah, great. All right. Well, let's keep rolling here, because we want to give a little more framework around what we're going to be doing going forward. So this is the first session of 6. So what we're doing now is giving you the intro, but what we're going to do is we're going to take the 5 dysfunctions of a team from Pat Lencioni's book, The Advantage. A lot of people have read it. Most people have some level of familiarity with it. And we're going to turn it around and talk about the 5 attributes of a high performance team. And so we're going to spend the next 5 weeks after this rolling through each one of these and taking them and breaking them down and doing what we're doing today and talking about how you can get to it. So trust is the base of the pyramid. And we talk about how we build trust and what does vulnerability-based trust look like? How is it that if I can be vulnerable with my team and with my coworkers when I know they've got my back and I can trust them, and I can say I did it wrong, I messed up, it's my fault, right? Those types of things are vulnerability-based trust, because the team has got you. We'll talk about conflict and having really good conflict where you can actually engage in disagreement and without worrying about if the manager or the head coach disagrees or agrees or with me or not, where I can actually state my opinion and everybody has an equal opportunity to be able to speak their opinion, even if somebody else is going to disagree. And that's an important part. We'll talk about some tools that you can use around that. We're going to get to commitment. And then once we're able to get to commitment, then we know that we're all pulling on the same rope, right? And we're all doing the same thing. But we can't do that unless people have had the opportunity to speak their opinion and to be able, then we've got the trust of the environment. So, and then we'll work our way up to what John was talking about, accountability, and really ideally peer-based accountability, right? That's where we want to get to, is where the team is policing itself. And the team members, whether it's managerial, whether it's team or whatever, they're so committed to each other as players or coworkers that they are managing each other and creating accountability for each other. And with trust and being able to be vulnerable, then you've got something pretty special. And then that's leading to obviously results. Results are really fixed on knowing what the scoreboard is. In business, a lot of people are like, well, what's my department number versus your department number? When really it's the net income of the company, right? It's what is that scoreboard number? And in sports, it's very clear what the scoreboard is, and all the individual stats don't matter so much. So, but we're going to talk about how to really focus in on results and making sure that there's clarity around that is. So, John, love you jump in here,
Yeah,
please.
that's great. And I think that, one of the things I mentioned in the intro part that I have been writing this monthly newsletter. And as part of that, I've been able to, I've met with a lot of my old rivals and coaches that I know that have been super successful and that are friends of mine. And, I'll ask them, and I'm very curious, what are some things that humbly they feel helps their program be so good. And none of them have talked about, I run this fit great play, we do this or that. It's all about the things that are on that pyramid. I mean, in one way or another, they all connect. And I think that, really a successful team becomes a byproduct of the top of the pyramid, becomes a byproduct of what happens underneath it. And I think, that's something that even with my own teams, if we beat a team that, maybe was better than us, and I'll say, hey, they probably got better players, but you know what? All the little things matter. This is why we won. And I think being able to kind of feel that as a group, I think really can move you forward.
Yeah. And I think what's great about this is that I think intuitively great leaders understand this without seeing it in a pyramid. And it is, like you said, John, it's just so practical. And I think because this system is laid out so nicely, and then there's tools for actually how you do it on each of these tiers, I think is what makes this really helpful for people who are growing in their managerial career or their coaching career or whatever. So it's just a nice system. All right. So what we want to do is kind of our lead in for the next session is we want to talk about smart organizations versus healthy organizations. And a smart organization are companies that they're good at the technical skills, right? They're good at finance, they're good at technology. They've got smart people that are good at their jobs. They're good at marketing, right? They're good at procurement and operations, right? So that's a smart company. And it's like good players. It's like, okay, that's just sort of the entry point, right? That's permission to play, that you've got to have those people in your organization. What we want to focus on the healthy side. And the healthy side of the organization is the things that we're going to talk about with the pyramid. It's building the trust. It's having good conflict. And when you have all those aspects, then you can minimize politics, right? You don't have to worry about people jockeying for position or trying to make themselves look better, because you've eliminated that. You've minimized confusion because everybody knows what the scoreboard is and what you are pulling towards and what the goals are. Results in high morale, where people are they're excited because they know that it's an even playing field, that it's fair, and they know that the team will be rewarded for the results that are produced. And people tend to be more productive, and you have much lower turnover of good people. And you're going to potentially have turnover of bad people, which is fine, right? Because in a good organization, in a high performing organization, bad people will get spit out. They will be the pack will spit them out. And that's ideally what you want, right? You want to have a team or an organization where poor performance is so obvious that person just cannot stay there. So turnover of bad people, no problem. All right. So the healthy side, though, it's hard to measure. And it's the emotional part, and it's the mushy gushy part. And sometimes people shy away from this because they feel like, that's that kumbaya kind of stuff. But we're gonna show you that there is a very clear return on investment for this type of work. You mean think about turnover and the difficulty of replacing somebody who's been there and the knowledge that they leave with. Just think of the cost of that and being able to hold on to people. So, and companies tend to really sort of over-index on the smart side because it's easy to measure. It's very objective, right? It's easy to do, and companies tend to sort of overdo it on that. Are you good technically or skills? So we're gonna take a look at we're gonna be really working hard on the healthy side.
And if I could just add a couple things. One is, you mentioned, sort of the, the touchy-feely side, so to speak. I mean, I'm a rather intense person, and I've been described as a lot of things, and not all of them are touchy-feely. So I guess what I'm saying is, I think this is incredibly valuable. I mean, I'm not by nature that way, but I think that seeing, and I think it's real. This is real, and I think just looking at at the healthy side, just things like the first two, minimal politics, minimal confusion. A lot of that comes down to having clear expectations. And as a leader, having very clear and consistent expectations, because then there's no confusion about why is this person getting this and that person getting that. Well, heck, we're very transparent, and what the expectations are. Now, again, that can be derived through maybe the group coming up with some norms or some expectations. But I think being clear, high morale, I mentioned earlier, everyone feeling valued. If everyone feels valued, that's the groundwork for having high morale. And with that, you get productivity. I mean, people are wanting to be there. And I think that, I've, some of my favorite teams, we could stay out and practice for 4 hours. Not that we ever did, but everybody would be enjoying it because there was a point to it, and they were enjoying it, and they felt valued, and it was fun, as Ralph mentioned earlier. And so I think these things all, again, weave together. And again, they're hard to measure or index, as we're saying here, but that's really in a lot of systems, that's really the difference is having not just good players, but having a good team.
Well, and you said it earlier, John. I mean, that's what makes the difference, right? Is people that are willing to get a little messy in the emotional side,
Mm-hmm.
and really buy into their team and understand who your people are and what they're going through, and those types of things, because we bring our whole self to work. We don't bring just a part. We bring our whole self, and our whole self comes with aging parents, young children, financial concerns, comes with all kinds of stuff that you bring with you. And we have to be able to consider that as managers and leaders, right? Of how we help people through that and understand what people are going through.
For sure. And I think, that's just something I learned as a coach a long time ago is, you can't fool kids. Like you can't, if you're not being sincere and you're not being genuine and you're not earnest about, if you ask them how their day is going and they say it's not going very well, and you pat them, oh no, you'll be fine. You have to like engage them and remember, and that's investment that you have to make as a coach or manager in your people, in your team. But by making that investment and being sincere, and again, like circling back with them if there's something that they're struggling with, like that will build you so much equity to be able to you know call it like you see it when that has to happen too. So I think, that the relationship piece again is a huge piece of this healthy side as well. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. So we talk about that health is really the multiplier of smart, right? So you got smart people, but if you're healthy, then you're multiplying. And John used to tell the story of, we teach math and you used to do cross multiply.
Cross multiply, yeah. My
I still
second
remember that.
my first year at Silverton High. Silverton is a town of about 10,000 people in kind of rural Oregon, and I went there from being at Foothill in Pleasanton, California, and after the semester, they asked me if I would teach all the kids that failed the lowest math class, if I would teach that group of 20 kids, and I said sure. And I'd never really taught math, but we did it all, cross multiplying. And so one day, about a year or two later, I'm driving through town, and this kind of guy's on the sidewalk waiting to cross the street, and I hear somebody yell my name, and I look over, and he's giving me the signal. Man, he might not know much, but he still knows how to cross multiply. So I think you never know it's going to land.
That's impact right there, John. All right. So our next session. So as I mentioned, we're going to start working our way up the pyramid. So the next session will focus on trust, and we're going to talk about why it's the base. We'll get into more depth around how you develop it and give you some tools, because a lot of times people will say, well, where do we even start? So it starts with a little bit of an evaluation of where your team's at, and then we'll give you some tools to move things along and to give you a starting point. So that'll be our next session. We thank you for participating in our first session with us today. We're looking forward to working through the 5 dysfunctions of a team with you and turning you into a highly functional team. And appreciate you being here tonight. John, any closing thoughts?
No, just that, as far as we're looking to be a resource and be a help. And we both feel very strongly about, having successful organizations and teams. And we both feel strongly about doing it the right way. And if we can help be part of that process for you, be thrilled to do it.
Awesome. Thank you and good night. All right. Recording is stopped.